What's up guys, Thinking Through Code here, back at it again with another video, and on this video we're going to build up on our last video about labels. Today we're going to be talking about more specific styling configuration for labels. So the topics are going to be precedence and styling. This is basically just a difference between the styling template that we create with the style class and the configuration that we can have more personal for every label. And then after that, we're going to talk about width, wrap length, anchor, and justify. Now, I want you guys to differentiate this video from last one. Last one was more broad and general of something that you can control the font, you can control the color of your label. But this one is actually going to be more focused on text and how text is going to be displayed on your label. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Okay, so this video's code is simply going to be a build up on last video's code. So in labels part 1, I showed you how to create a general styling template for all the labels inside of your GUI app that you can apply with the style argument. And we've pretty much just created a greeting label with the label class. So if we run our current application, we get our greeting label asking us for our name with all the styling configurations we've given to it. So we're going to create a second label to display the concepts of this video. We're going to call it random label. ttk.label. We're still going to put it inside of our mainframe. The text will be, this is a random label. And we're going to give it our style. We're going to place it right below our other label. And when we run our application, there we have it. It's right there. We're actually going to make it sticky on the left side. So let's use that property. Rerun this, and we're good to go. Excellent. Now, you see, we just configured our label by simply applying in the general template. However, there are option specifics in each class. So whenever you call the class, you actually have the background, padding, foreground, font options that you can also call them. So you could actually insert a comma here and start writing, right? But I think that can get a little bit messy. Whenever you want to do something that is outside of your general styling template, just for readability of your code, which is very important, by the way, when you're designing a product, make sure you just simply do it in another section. So to do so, you can actually use the configure method. So I'm going to create random label, and we click on configure. Configure is a very special method for all widgets, by the way, and you can apply it to any widget, a frame, an entry, a button, or a label. And configure, what it does is that at any point in your application, it's going to reconfigure. So it can change the style, the font, whatever, you know, it's a very powerful tool, and you can actually create dynamic things with it depending on what your GUI does. But for now, we're just going to do styling. So background, we're going to set it to red. Our foreground, we're going to set it to white. And our font is going to be Helvetica, size of 14, and we're going to make it bold. Now, when I run this application, excellent. You see that? So what am I trying to show you guys right now is that basically there is precedence in between the styling methods that you use. Configure will take far more precedence than your general template. So whatever general template you applied, you can do it. Sure, that's what you apply on when you first create your label. But then after that, it is overwritten by the configure method, or even if you add any further things in here. So that's very important. And now there's also one little thing that I didn't show you guys before. It's also the underline. So you can actually click on this and it's going to underline the whole text that you have it here, just like when you do it in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. And if you want to be even more precise with that, there is also this option, which is underline. And over here, you give the index of the character that is going to be underlined. 0 being obviously T. This is a random label. So when I run this, only my T is underlined. And that's it. So that's the first concept that we need to take care of in this video, is understanding how there's precedence in how you style things. So at some point, it's very possible that you run your code and you're like, why is this looking this way? Most of the time is because you have overwritten the styling method that you created before as a general template. Next topic we're going to be talking about is the property of width in a label. Width is very important. Say, for example, you want your label to be a little bit larger or shorter when you display it on screen. This property is going to help you with that. Now, there's a lot of confusion that can go around width, and I see this a lot on Stack Overflow and when you do a simple Google search. And my goal in this video is simply just to clarify that. What is the unit of width and how you can use width? So let's get to it. So to properly display how width works, we're simply going to apply it into our configure method, which is exactly how you should be applying it. So we're going to set up a width of 30 here. And you know what? Just for consistency, we're going to apply it into our greeting label as well. So let's go into greeting label configure. And we're going to give it a width of 30. Now I want you guys to keep in mind that Helvetica 14 is applied on both of these labels, right? This one using the template, of course, but Helvetica 14 is still applied there. The only difference is that this one has it bold. So keep that in mind. They have the same size and the same width. Now, when we run this code, what do you realize? Well, first of all, when we first run this, since I made it sticky on north, south, east, and west, when we expand it, this one expands with it, of course, because it's taking the space of the column that has a weight of 1. However, when we first run it, the window is going to take the width and height of the things that are inside of it. And right now, the width of both of them is 30, and they're the same. They're equal. Now, to even better display this, I'm going to take away the east, so it's going to be sticky only in the left side, and we're going to change this one to 20. When we're going to run this application, okay, we notice something a little bit different. Your width for this one is 30, and your width for this one is also 30. However, how come this one just got bigger as soon as we changed the font? That's really strange. Now, we're going to try something else. We're going to set it up to 5. When I run this application, once again, super strange, right? The width that we have here is 30 and the one that we have here is 30. The only thing that changed is the font size. And if you haven't guessed by now, the simple explanation here is that the units for width are text units. So the width is basically telling you here, these are 30 text units of the specified font size. It's as simple as that. So therefore, width is going to be dependent on the size of the font that you set it. And just to display even further, we're going to give it a size of 45. And then we realize that this is getting huge, right? It's even way bigger than the width of 30 that is technically equal here, but not really, because the label here has a font of 14 and the label over here has a font of 40. Therefore, having 40 pixels by, let's just have an estimate here, by 30 pixels is giving you 30 units of that, and that makes it a lot bigger. So as your font grows bigger, keep in mind that your width is also going to grow bigger because the units for your width are units of text. And this is something that can actually confuse some people when they're trying to style their widgets. So this is very important, and I see a lot of questions being asked by this. So this is what you need to know about width. The units of text will determine how long your width is going to be. Another property that I want to show you guys on this video is wrap length. Wrap length is used whenever your label has a lot more text and that text needs to be properly displayed in a new line or in many new lines inside of the label. So you need to control that so that it looks as visually pleasing as possible for your user experience. But another thing is that I don't really recommend having that much text on your label. I don't think labels are meant to have that much text. That's why we have the text widget on Tkinter, which I won't present on this video, but on another one. But wrap length is still a feature for labels, which is what I'm going to show you guys right now. All right, guys, so back to our code. The only thing that I changed, by the way, I switched it from a font of 45 to a font of 14. And the only thing we're going to do is we're going to add some text into this label. So this is a random label. This is a random GUI. This video is for labels. Coding is cool. Not my best work, I get it, but you know what? It's going to do it for today. So when we're going to run this, what do we see? Okay, that's something strange. We kept our width, our label seems to have the styling that we desired, but the one issue here is that our text is cut off, right? So now I want you guys to think, and I know already what you could assume already. Maybe you could expand the row. So we're gonna put our main frame here, row configure, index of 1, and we're gonna give it the weight of 1. So that's gonna make our row expand with our GUI. Still nothing, right? So our row got bigger, that's why we're centered here in the middle, but the weird part is we're still getting our text cut off. So maybe we could make it sticky on north and south. Let's try that. So sticky on north and south and west. When we run our application, we expand it. Okay, it's still really lame. We don't see the rest of my text, and now I have this huge red label that just doesn't make any sense. What if we give it a one last try and we put east in here? Now when we run our application, expand this, finally we see the rest of my text. But do you see how bad this looks? How tedious that is? You know, for labels with a lot of text, we need to have a solution for that. And one way you could override this problem could be with \n, which is how in coding you show that you want a new line. So obviously what I did right here was the wrong thing to do. I just wanted to show you how some people could have brainstormed this and probably gotten something terrible. So we're gonna reverse the code that I just did. Comment this one out, and we're gonna go back to our west over here only. And you know what? We're gonna add our \n. So that represents a new line. So after every sentence, I'm asking my code to add a new line. And I'm gonna run this. There you have it. So sentence by sentence. But then again, this still looks a little bit odd, right? So it has my width of 30 here, but it's only taking a percentage of it, and I have this big red space here. And this is where wrap length becomes extremely useful. It will allow you to set up a specific length in pixels where you want your text to wrap around your label. So since we're using labels, we need to use wrap length. If you use a text widget, things are a little bit different, but we're going to get on that on another video. But wrap length is more for labels. So we're going to take this off. And actually, another reason why you would prefer wrap length before using these guys is because it will be so hard for you to coordinate when you need to actually use the \n for your text to look neat, right? And obviously, you might cut off one word in two, and you don't want that. So we're going to take this method out of our practice book and simply go straight to wrap length. You know what? I'm going to set a value of, let's try 1 at first. Just for you to understand it, obviously this is not going to look good. So when we run this, we only see one letter. Basically, the way wrap length works is that you set up a specific length, and it looks within all your text, all the characters that have that length. And if it doesn't find one, it's simply going to settle for 1 and just round all the way to the other one. So since all my font size are of 14, obviously the width of each font is probably of each character is not going to be, it's not going to be 1. It's going to be either 14 or lower. Then it's only going to take one character before moving on to the next line. If it really cut off at 1 pixel, then none of these characters would be showing. So let's try 28. At a line of 28 pixels, we see an average of sometimes 1, but sometimes also 2 characters. So that's exactly the game that you got to do with wrap length. You simply have to keep on setting it up until it looks good for you. So let's try 150. It's not looking too shabby, right? But then again, 300. Whoops. Careful with typos. Run this application. Okay, it looks a lot better. It really doesn't look that bad. And what's great here is that you're combining wrap length with width, but you can also simply use wrap length on its own. Like I'm going to comment out width over here, and we're going to close this. It's still going to look good. Check it out. But the only difference here is that at some point your width is not going to be aligned with the other one. But if you don't mind that and you're fine with this, then go ahead, go nuts, right? So that's how wrap length works, guys. You're going to set up a line length. It's going to hit that line length and then move on to the new one. If you feel like the next word, if it knows that the next word is going to hit longer length, it's simply just going to move on to the other one. And that's how it is. So I actually like to use either a combination of width and wrap length, but this can also look awkward sometimes. So I go straight into wrap length sometimes and it looks good. And now we move on into the last two features that we want to present on this video, which are anchor and justify. Look into the picture that is right in front of you, and you can see that this is how your label is divided. And this is how anchor works. So your text can either be in the center, that's where you can anchor it, in the north, south, east, or west. It's basically the same concepts as sticky, but you can also add the four corners all around it: northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast. So if you have a big label and you want your text to be specified into one positioning, that's how you can do it with anchor. Justify is just the same way you use it in Word or Google Docs. You can align your text to be aligned towards the right, left, or center. But obviously, since coding is all about doing and not just about explaining, we're going to get right to it into our code. I'm going to show you guys how anchor actually works. And to do so, we're going to uncomment the row configure for our row where my label is put on. And we're going to make it sticky on north, south, and east. We're going to add that in there. When I run the application and I expand it, okay, we see that my whole row, my whole label is expanding. And since my label text is centered on the row, I have the text right here in the middle. But what if I wanted it to be in the middle, not just of my row, but also of my column? This is where anchor is important. By default, anchor is set to the west, meaning that it's going to be set to the left. But going back to the diagram that I showed you guys before, you could set an anchor of equal to center. And then we're going to close this application, run it again. What do you realize? You have it right here in the center, right? Which is great. Now we're going to set it up to north. Expand it. We're all the way at the top. So now you're really controlling where the text is going to show on your label. If I put south, you guessed it, it's going to be right at the bottom. And obviously at this corner, it will be northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast. And that's it. That's how anchor works. You're pretty much just telling where your text is going to be anchored all over your label. And obviously you would never really, I don't see a situation where you would need to use this on a label. First of all, because a label usually doesn't have that much text. And first of all, because your label is never going to be that big where your anchoring is going to be noticeable. Now, keeping this in mind, we're going to go back to center. We're going to show what justify exactly is. So justify is just how I explained it, how it works in Word or any other writing software out there like Word or Google Docs. But if I put, for example, center on justify and I run my application, you realize how my text changed? It's no longer a new line and it's aligned on the left. It's actually just how it works when you set up your text to look and align in towards the center, right? And if I put left, we go back to our default. That shows our text aligned towards the left. And obviously you guessed it, the last value will be right. And that's it. It's aligned towards the right. And that's basically what justify and anchor is. And don't mix up both of them, by the way, because, for example, I could have my what is your name here. I could anchor it to, let's just give this a shot for, let's add anchor here. Oh, whoops. I'm going to add it in my configure. I'm going to set it to center. And now you realize that since this is only one very small sentence, it could show that you're actually justifying it towards the center, but no, you're only anchoring it towards the center of your label. But your text on its own, it's still justified in the default, which is towards the left. So don't mix up both of them. They are different and they're used differently. Now we reached the end of the video. Of course, guys, if you liked this video and it was informative for you, leave a like, subscribe, and put the notification tab on. If you have further comments, don't hesitate to give them to me. I'm always willing to listen to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I know it was a little bit long, but there was a lot of material to cover with respect to text and labels. See you guys next time.